Peace and love. This is your girl Karina Dean, and I'm back with another video. This video is the remedy to your enemies. And in astrology, you can actually determine the energy bodies of those who may be disagreeable with you. Now, this is just one glimpse, so it's important not to take this and say this is the only way. It's also important to understand that the people who embody these energies may have actual planets in these signs from you. So, like, they might have a sun, they might have a moon or rising, but they also just might embody the energy as well. So they might, maybe they work in the environment, they have an occupation of this energy, maybe you meet them in this arena of these energies. So it's important not to use this as concrete and just plaster it onto anybody. But in astrology, you can find those who would be who wouldn't be necessarily your best partnerships, let's just say. So here is the remedy to your secret enemies. Okay, so the first would be your opposition. So from your sun sign or from your rising sign, the opposite sign would govern over your public adversaries. And this is because it's obviously oppositional. Therefore, the energy is like yours, but it's coming from a different point of view. You both kind of want the same things, but you both have a completely different way of getting those things. So that would be the opposite sign from yours, or the seventh house, right? So you would count 7 signs from yours. And the way to remedy this is to understand that not only is 7 signs or your 7th house or your oppositional, all of them are the same thing. They are your adversary, but it's important to understand that you do have the same desires. And the oppositional sign is also the sign that represents, first of all, what your long-term partnership would be. And it also represents kind of you in a way of saying you complete me, right? Because when you embody the principles of that other sign, then you can actually master the entire axis. So it's important to understand that 7 signs from you is oppositional force, and how you would remedy 7 signs from you is to dive into what are the principles of that sign, what is the theme of that sign, understanding that without that sign and the energies embodying that sign, you wouldn't have partnerships. So there's something about embracing those energies that will make you stronger. Now, so it's also important to understand that 7 from your sign is also what would represent your own relation to other people. So if you are having issues with people who have planets in this sign, or people who embody the energies of the sign, it's also to understand that this is your best way to relate. So if you're really having issues with these people, this has a lot to do with your lacking of being relatable through the principles of that sign. So this also would have to do with your relation to the world, so this area also has a lot to do with your fame. Now, one way to also find fame would be through 10 houses from your sign in the 10th house, right? But the seventh house also has a lot to do with that, because it's it's about how you relate to others, and that's going to have a lot to do with how people receive you. So if you are having oppositional force, there's something about that sign that you may say, okay, well, I don't really think that I have any sort of energies, but you do. So let's go through the zodiac and we'll talk about that. So the first axis would be Aries and Libra. And Aries and Libra are oppositional forces. So if a Libra is having issues with Aries, some of the things that Libra may want to do is embrace their own independence. Libra might deny the fact that they are competitive, which is Aries, right? So if they actually embrace their own competition and maybe use it in a way that serves them, then they can actually remedy the oppositional forces. You see, the reason that Aries and Libra might actually bump heads in their oppositional forces has a lot to do with being authentic versus being relatable. Aries might look at Libra and say, well, you're fake because, you want everybody to like you. Therefore, you might have different faces. You might put on a different way about you that isn't authentic. And Aries is all about authentic. So one thing that Aries might judge about Libra is that they are, too people pleasing, to the point that they lose themselves. And how Aries would remedy their oppositional force from Libra might be to understand that you need other people. Therefore, you have to learn how to compromise. You have to learn how to be cooperative. And you also have to learn how to be agreeable. And when you embrace that, you will now remedy your oppositional force. And then you also bring yourself up into a level in which you can be, you can ignite your fame in that house, ignite the fame part of that house. You can ignite more business partnerships in that house, and you can also ignite marriage in that house if once you deal with the adversary energy. So Libra and Aries is all about me, I am, versus us, basically. And so they both kind of want the same thing. They're both fighting for almost the same thing, which is really like identity, but Aries wants, Aries is my identity and Libra is our identity. And we need both, because if you just have only Libra and you only go by Libra, then you are codependent. But if you only go by Aries, then you can be selfish in the more lower terms, in which you're alone and you won't have any help or anyone who can support you. And even as human beings, we need someone to support us. We need somebody to relate to. The human that is standing on their own and doesn't have anyone to follow, which is Aries. Aries is the pioneer, the leader. If they don't have anyone to follow them, then they're not even truly in their best energy. So they need other people, and that in that sense, they need to learn how to relate. And that's how Aries deals with their oppositional force. Libra needs to understand that they are an individual with individual needs. And so therefore, even though they are at their best as a unit of two, Libra will gain a lot of oppositional forces from Aries energy if they don't embrace their competitiveness, if they don't embrace their authenticity, and if they don't embrace their own independence. And that would be the Aries Libra axis. The Taurus and Scorpio axis has a lot to do with the energies of money. Taurus is, and also possessions. And Taurus is I have. And Scorpio, which is Taurus's opposite, is we have. So these two are oppositional in the sense that Taurus is a lot more stuck in what is just theirs, and Scorpio is going to be about what I can take from you and what you can provide for me as well. So together, they are the unit of money, and they even rule over financial institutions and the money that we gain from the people we work for, or the money that we can gain from, from help from forces, or bigger forces, financial forces, or investments, right? So these two need each other. They both want the same thing, which is financial security. They want security, right? But Taurus may judge Scorpio as being almost too taking. Like they Scorpio wants too much of what Taurus has. So Taurus would have to learn how to share in order to ignite their seventh house past the adversary and into, becoming more relatable, becoming more famous, becoming more able to have long-term relationships. Taurus would have to learn how to share. And Taurus would also have to learn how to trust. And Scorpio might appear to look at Taurus as being selfish as well, being, overly possessive, superficial to a degree, and maybe even a little lazy, because Scorpio is ruled by Mars, where Taurus is ruled by Venus. So the two of them together want money, but and they want security, but they go after it in different ways, you know. Taurus is hardworking and it's more of attraction energy, where Scorpio is, I'm going to go after it, right? It's Mars energy. So what Scorpio would have to do is embrace their own materialism within them. Scorpio sometimes appears to be very deep, but ignores the fact that they are materialistic. And they might judge others to be so, but not actually see that they embrace it themselves. And when they do embrace that part of them, then they ignite their own house of fame. They ignite their seventh house of long-term relationships. Scorpio would have to have respect for what is other people's stuff, and understand that when they're merging with somebody else, that does mean that, that the merge is two units coming together with their own resources. That means Scorpio has to make sure they're bringing to the table and the other is bringing to the table, right? And that's Scorpio at their best. But when they respect the other's possessions, right, as theirs, that's when they become more in harmony with their relationships, especially long term. If Scorpio is just looking out for themselves and taking, but not but not respecting the other's possessions, then they become, almost psychically draining, right? Because Scorpio's water, and it does start to weigh in on the psyche of their partnerships when that sharing is not true. So Scorpio and Taurus are the oppositional forces, and that's what they need from each other. Gemini and Sagittarius. Gemini is the lower analytical mind ruled by Mercury. Sagittarius is the bigger picture mind, the higher mind, ruled by Jupiter. So Gemini is like the sibling. That's why Gemini rules over the sibling, right? The lower teachings, and Jupiter rules over the father's teachings, the hierarchy, the bigger person, the guru, the teacher, the real teacher, right? So these two are combative and are oppositional because Gemini looks at Sagittarius as not having enough details. And Sagittarius looks at Gemini as having too many details, as talking too much. Sagittarius is often very blunt, because of that. They just say what is necessary and they don't need to say any more, right? Gemini says more because Gemini sees the duality and the excessiveness of all that is. And Gemini tries to explain it through words. And so when Gemini is explaining it through language and words, the duality of the world, that's why they see, that's why they talk so much, because they see so much. And there's even things that cannot be explained through words, but Gemini will attempt to explain it. So together they are education and knowledge, right? They're the student and teacher. That's what makes them in common. And Gemini will often miss out on the fact that when they can summarize themselves, right, then they can become more relatable. And Sagittarius, when they ask questions, right, they too can become more relatable, both igniting the seventh house out of adversary and more into the fame, right, and the long-term relationships of finance and of romance. So that's what's important about these two and how they work together in completion of the axis of education, of language, right? Language, which is culture, right? So Gemini is language and Sagittarius is culture. Together, they combine, right? We need the culture. The culture needs the language, and the language needs the culture, right? So together, they create this this axis of information. And it's really important that Gemini understands that they embody the Sagittarius energy and they can embody it, and vice versa. Sagittarius can embody Gemini as well.